I never planned on spending my nights behind the counter of a roadside family motel, but here I am, and here I've been for nearly 2 years. Watching the neon vacancy sign buzz faintly against the pine dark sky, like a tired firefly that refuses to die. The place is called Morrow Pines Motel, a name my uncle swears carries history, though what kind of history he never really says. Only that it's been in the family longer than either of us has been alive, and now it's mine to tend in the hours when the highway goes quiet. The truckers hinnish into their rigs, and the pines creak with the kind of wind that doesn't sound like weather, but like whispers, low and knowing. I was fresh out of tech school when my uncle asked me to help out for the summer, but one summer stretched to another, and pretty soon the motel's odd rhythm, the flicker of the sign, the groan of the pipes, the way the pool water always seemed deeper than it should be, became my own. The job's not complicated: check in a guest, hand them a brass key that still smells faintly of polish, wipe down the counter, balance the ledger. But what's strange, what keeps me tethered despite the loneliness, is the rules. 6 of them, written in my uncle's blocky handwriting in a battered leather binder he handed me on my first graveyard shift, saying, "They're not for you, Fred. They're for the motel." I remember laughing, thinking it was some family joke, but he didn't laugh back, just topped the page with a finger that trembled more than I'd ever noticed before. And there they were, 6 rules that looked simple at first glance, but carried a weight I couldn't name. Rule 1. If a guest arrives after 11:11 p.m., give them room 6. If room 6 is occupied, give them room 9. Never offer alternatives. Rule 2. Do not answer the lobby phone after the third ring between midnight and 12:10 a.m. Let it ring out. Rule 3. If you hear housekeeping cards when no one's on duty, lock the laundry room and leave the linens alone until sunrise. Rule 4. Deliver coffee to any guest who asks for the strong kind, but do not accept tips, return exact change. Rule 5. At 3:03 a.m., all TVs turn to channel 0. Do not try to change them back. And Rule 6. If you find a key that doesn't match our rack, throw it into the pool. Do not pocket it. Do not keep it. At first, I figured the rules were there to spook the new guy, an initiation maybe, because motels like this thrive on stories, on the kind of whispered rumors that make travelers pull off the road out of curiosity or fear. But the longer I worked here, the more I noticed things lining up too neatly with those words in the binder. The late night guests who never asked for any room but 6, their eyes shadowed like they hadn't slept in days, the phone that would ring at exactly midnight, the air humming with something that wasn't electricity but felt alive, my own name nearly forming in the static of the third ring before I slammed the receiver down, the soft rattle of wheels when the place was empty, the ghostly clink of bottles on a cart I knew wasn't there, the way certain guests ordered the strong kind with voices too flat to be casual, and how my uncle drilled into me that $1.75 was the price, and not a penny more or less, no matter how generous the bill slid across the counter. The eerie silence at 3:03, when every television, whether switched off, unplugged, or ancient, would glow blue-gray and tune itself to channel 0, and whatever appeared on that screen was something I learned not to describe out loud because it stayed sharper in the mind than any dream. And lastly, the keys. Those old brass tags that sometimes appeared in places they shouldn't, numbers engraved that never matched our 12-room layout, and how my uncle always said to throw them into the pool, no matter how much they gleamed, no matter how heavy they felt, because keeping them meant keeping something you couldn't return. That first night I sat behind the desk, the binder open, the neon light pulsing faintly through the glass door, and I told myself I'd follow the rules, not because I believed them, but because following rules is easy when you've got nothing else to do at 2 a.m. But when the bell above the lobby door chimed at 11:12, I looked up to see a woman standing there, rain dripping from the hood of her sweatshirt, her face pale and drawn, eyes darting like she expected to be chased inside. And she whispered one word, soft as a plea: 6. I didn't ask how she knew, didn't laugh like I might have just hours before. I just reached for the brass key with the tarnished number 6 and slid it across the counter, my pulse a steady drum in my ears as she curled her fingers around it, her nails bitten down to nothing. And for the first time, I understood my uncle's phrase. This place wasn't haunted, not exactly. It was temperamental, and if you treated it right, it might let you live. But if you didn't, well, that's what the rules were for.
Room 6 sits at the far corner of the motel, the one with the flickering porch light that never quite dies but never fully shines either. And I swear the air around it always feels heavier, like it's pulling something in and holding it. I walked the woman, Lydia according to the name she scribbled on the ledger, down the cracked sidewalk, rain pattering against the aluminum awning, and unlocked the door for her because her hands trembled too much to fit the key in the slot. The room smelled faintly of old pine cleaner and cigarette ash ground into carpet fibers that no vacuum can reach. And as soon as the door swung open, I felt the strange static shift that always comes with this room, like the air's been waiting. She slipped inside, eyes darting to the bathroom, the closet, the drawn curtains, and when I offered extra towels, she shook her head sharply, like the gesture carried weight I couldn't understand. So I left her there, the brass keys still in her hand, and walked back to the lobby under the buzzing rain. When I sat at the counter, the binder felt heavier than usual, as if it was waiting for me to flip back to Rule 1 and remind myself I'd done exactly what I was supposed to. No questions, no alternatives, room 6 after 11:11. But that didn't quiet the unease in my chest, the feeling that once Lydia crossed that threshold, something in the motel took note. At 11:45, the lobby phone rang once, then twice, then a third time, the red light pulsing like a heartbeat, and my hand itched to grab the receiver, my own name humming against my teeth as if the phone already knew who it was calling. But I held steady, staring at the rules binder until the ringing bled into silence and the neon vacancy sign buzzed like it had swallowed the sound. Then came the faintest rattle from the back corridor, the sound of a housekeeping cart's wheels turning slowly, evenly across the tile, even though no staff worked nights but me. I stood, pulse hammering, and followed the sound just far enough to see the shape of a shadow slide across the laundry room door. The kind of silhouette you'd swear was someone pushing a cart, the faint squeak of rubber wheels, the soft clatter of bottles shifting, but when I reached the door and unlocked it, the sound stopped immediately, cut off mid-turn, leaving only silence and a folded towel that hadn't been there seconds before. A towel stitched with the motel's old logo we hadn't used since the 90s. I didn't touch it, just left it there like a warning, and went back to the desk. The clock ticked toward midnight, and at 12:03, Lydia returned, her hood down now, hair damp and tangled, her eyes rimmed red but oddly calm, like she'd been waiting for something. She said, "Coffee, the strong kind," and I froze because I knew that phrase carried weight too, and Rule 4 burned in the back of my skull. Deliver coffee, exact change, no tips. I poured from the back pot, the one darker than the others, the one that always tastes bitter no matter how fresh, and slid it to her with $1.75 back in coins. She didn't even try to tip, just wrapped both hands around the mug as though it were more ritual than refreshment, and whispered, "It still remembers me," before carrying it back toward room 6. I didn't ask what she meant because at this place, questions never get you answers, only deeper into something you can't climb out of. And as the neon flickered outside and the rules binder set open to the page about TVs, I knew that when 3:03 came, every set in this motel would hum alive to Channel 0, and Lydia, whatever she was searching for in room 6, would be waiting for it.
The rain didn't let up that night, steady and cold against the glass doors. And the longer it fell, the more it felt like the whole world was narrowing down to just this place. Morrow Pines Motel, its neon heart flickering, its 12 rooms lined up like teeth in a crooked smile. I sat at the counter, staring at the clock, waiting for the minutes to crawl past midnight, when the phone always tempted me, when the rules felt sharpest. And at 12:01, the first ring split the silence, low and heavy. The red light pulsing, one beat, then two, then three, and I swear I heard my name, Fred, in the static vibration that rattled my teeth. But I kept my hands pressed flat to the counter, knuckles white, because Rule 2 wasn't a suggestion. It was survival. And sure enough, on the fourth beat, the ringing stopped, leaving only the sound of the rain and the faint buzz of the vacancy sign. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. And then came another noise, faint at first. So faint I thought it was just the storm. A shuffle, a squeak, the unmistakable sound of wheels on tile. I froze, my stomach sinking, because no one pushes carts here at night. No one but the ones you're not supposed to see. And the sound rolled closer from the hallway that led past the vending machines and down toward the laundry room. I grabbed the master key and forced myself to look, though every instinct screamed not to. And there it was, a shadow sliding across the floor, the outline of a cart, tall and square, the rattle of bottles clinking against each other like teeth in a glass. But no figure behind it, no hands pushing. Rule 3 pounded in my head. Lock the laundry room and leave the linens alone until sunrise. I backed up slow, heart hammering, slid the key into the door, turned the lock, and the sound stopped mid-squeak, like cutting a cord. When I turned back, a towel lay neatly folded by my feet.
Motel Blue, embroidered with the old monogram we stopped using a decade ago. Edges damp as if it had just been pulled from the dryer. I didn't touch it, just left it there and hurried back to the counter. And as I sat down, the TV in the lobby hiccuped alive, the screen glowing dim blue, not on static, not on snow, but on a view I knew too well. The drained pool outside, black water gleaming in the rain, the ladder descending into depths that looked far deeper than they ever were in daylight. The lobby clock clicked forward to 2:59. Then, for a heartbeat, to 2:56, before finally correcting to 3 o'clock. And I swear the air thickened, as if the motel itself was bracing for something. At 3:03, like clockwork, every TV came to life. Rooms 2 through 12 glowing behind their curtains, the lobby set humming, all of them tuned to Channel 0. And on each screen was the pool again, only not the pool outside. Not exactly. It was darker, wrong, like a twin that had been kept underground, with water too black to be water, and ripples that spread even when the image was still. Then drifting into the frame, I saw it. A brass key, oval tag, etched with numbers that didn't match any of ours, 611, spinning slowly in the current like bait dangling on a line. And the moment I saw it, Rule 6 slammed into my chest. If you find a key that doesn't match our rack, throw it into the pool. My uncle told me once that keeping one meant keeping something that wasn't meant for you, and that the motel always collected its debts eventually. And watching that screen, I understood why. The key gleamed brighter than any brass should, like it wanted me to remember it, like it wanted to belong to me. And I had to grip the counter to fight the urge to reach for it, even though it wasn't physically there. And that's when I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, measured, bare soles against tile. And I turned to see Gary, the man in the Grand Canyon t-shirt from earlier, standing in the lobby, barefoot, eyes hollow, coffee mug still in his hand, though the liquid inside looked darker than coffee. "Depth," he murmured, staring at the TV, his voice flat and far away. "Depth is worse than height. At least with height you see the fall coming." I swallowed, unsure what to say, watching him step closer to the screen until his breath fogged the glass. And in that fog, I swore I saw another face, not his, pressed against the other side, pale and wide-eyed like someone staring out from underwater. "She's down there," Gary whispered, his fingers twitching against the mug. "Always has been, waiting for the strong kind to wake her up." Before I could ask what he meant, the lights flickered, every bulb buzzing like a swarm of hornets, and the Channel 0 feed shifted, zooming closer to the pool's surface until it was like standing over it. And for one fleeting second I saw a pale hand, long fingers dripping, trembling, reach up from the depths and release a second key, this one darker, tarnished, its number scratched but still visible, 9. The screen snapped back to static, the TVs went dark, and Gary let out a sharp, broken laugh before turning toward the glass doors, muttering storms inside the walls, as he pushed outside into the rain barefoot, leaving wet prints that stopped halfway across the lobby tile as if he had simply vanished. I sat frozen at the counter, staring at the towel still lying folded by the laundry door, the ghostly weight of the phone that had whispered my name. The image of those keys burned into my mind, and I knew, deep in my bones, that the motel wasn't just temperamental. It was hungry, and it wanted me to understand the rules not as warnings, but as bargains, little trades to keep it from asking for more.
By the time the clock ticked toward 3:30, my nerves were raw, every creak of the floorboards, every sputter of the ice machine sounding like an omen. And I kept replaying the image of that hand on Channel 0, pale fingers letting go of the tarnished key marked with a 9, the very number tied to Rule 1. And the thought dug under my skin like a splinter, that maybe the rules weren't just about preventing disasters, maybe they were signposts pointing towards something deeper. I tried to steady myself with the familiar, straightened the ledger, stacked the brochures for roadside attractions no one ever visited, wiped down the counter though it was already clean, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. And when the bell over the lobby door jingled, I nearly leapt out of my chair. It was Lydia, her hoodie plastered to her shoulders from rain, her eyes too wide, glassy, like she'd been staring at something only she could see. And she asked in a whisper that cracked at the edges, "Do the TVs always do that?" I nodded, because lying here never pays. And she pressed both hands against the counter as if steadying herself, then muttered, "She's still in there. Fred, I saw my sister's face, just for a second, like she was pressing against the glass trying to scream." And though part of me wanted to chalk it up to grief or imagination, the other part, the part that had already seen towels folded by invisible hands and carts that rolled themselves, knew better than to dismiss it. She shivered, then asked for coffee again, the strong kind, and I felt the rules coil around me tighter than ever, Rule 4 thrumming in my head like a warning bell. But I poured it anyway, slid it to her with exact change, coins cold against her palm. And this time, she didn't move toward room 6. She just sat in a booth near the window, staring at the mug, sipping slow, her gaze fixed on the pool outside as though waiting for something to rise. I tried not to stare but couldn't help it, because I knew that when the coffee cooled, whatever thin tether she had to her sister would vanish. And part of me wondered if she knew that too, if she was dragging out the last sips just to hold on to the thread. The storm rattled harder against the glass, thunder low and rolling, and then the TV behind the counter flickered back on, even though I hadn't touched it. Screen glowing not with channel 0 this time, but with a greeny black and white feed of the laundry room, the locked door clearly visible, and I froze as the camera panned slowly of its own accord to the towel I'd left there. It wasn't folded anymore. It was spread out flat on the tile, and beneath it something shifted, like the shape of a body writhing under a sheet. I wanted to look away, but couldn't, heart hammering as the towel began to rise, inch by inch, lifted by nothing, until it peeled off the ground entirely and collapsed back down, leaving the floor bare, empty, as though it had never been there at all. Then the feed snapped to static, the TV shut off, and I realized Lydia was standing right beside me now, her mug empty, her face pale, her lips trembling, and she whispered, "She's under the stairs, Fred, under the stairs," before pressing the brass 6 key into my hand, like she couldn't hold it any longer. My skin went cold the moment it touched me, the tag slick as if dipped in water, and I tried to set it back on the rack, but it wouldn't stay. It slid right back off, clattering to the counter no matter how I placed it, as though the motel itself refused to let it rest. Lydia looked at me then, her expression not desperate anymore, but resigned, and she said, "You know the rules better than anyone, but maybe they're not rules, they're instructions, and instructions are meant to lead somewhere," before turning and walking out into the rain, no umbrella, no luggage, just gone into the night, like a shadow dissolving into darker shadows. I wanted to call her back, but my voice stuck in my throat, and before I could move, the lobby phone began to ring again, sharp and insistent. I glanced at the clock, 3:45, outside the forbidden window, but the red bulb glowed brighter than I'd ever seen, throbbing, and on the second ring the display lit up with a single word, "Sister." My stomach dropped because the phone never supposed to have caller ID, and as the third ring shook the receiver against its cradle, I knew deep down that if I picked up, it wouldn't just be a voice on the other end. It would be something reaching back, something that had been waiting all along for me to break just one rule.
The phone's ringing drilled into my skull, louder with each pulse, until it felt like the whole lobby vibrated with it. And though every instinct screamed to leave it, to let the motel's hunger pass me by, my hand still hovered inches above the receiver, trembling, caught between fear and curiosity. Because what if it wasn't just a trap? What if it was Lydia's sister reaching out through whatever black corridor the motel had swallowed her into? And maybe, just maybe, picking it up would be a chance to give her back, to prove the rules weren't about survival at all, but about control, keeping us from glimpsing the truth. I can't say why I did it. Maybe exhaustion, maybe the way the storm outside pressed so heavy, it felt like the whole world had been reduced to the lobby and that blinking red light. But on the 4th ring, I grabbed the receiver and pressed it to my ear, and immediately I regretted it. Because there was no voice, no words, only a wet sound like someone breathing underwater. And then, faintly, a whisper that bled straight into my mind without passing through my ears. "Fred, bring it down." I froze, because the voice wasn't Lydia's sister. It was my uncle's, the same tone he used when I was a kid sneaking cookies before dinner, calm but commanding. And I knew it couldn't be him. Not now, not when he was supposed to be asleep in his cabin across the courtyard. Yet it carried the weight of truth, the kind of sound that made you move whether you wanted to or not. I dropped the phone like it burned me, the cord swinging, the red light dead now. But when I looked up, I saw something worse. The key rack behind the counter had shifted, every brass tag rattling softly. And right there in the middle hung a tag that had never been there before. 11, oval and gleaming, swaying like it had just been hung. Rule 6 pounded in my head. Throw it into the pool, don't keep it. But I couldn't move, my feet rooted, because the TV behind me flicked on again, channel 0. And this time it didn't show the pool. It showed the stairwell, the one hidden behind room 9, the one my uncle swore he'd sealed years ago. Only now it wasn't sealed at all. It was yawning open, each step slick with black water, descending into shadows too thick for the screen to pierce. And then came the sound I dreaded most, the one Rule 3 warned about, the rattle of wheels. Faint at first, then louder, rolling right down the hallway toward the lobby, though the laundry door was locked tight. I backed against the counter, eyes fixed on the corridor, and sure enough, a cart emerged, pushed by no one, bottles clinking in its racks, towels stacked high, moving with steady purpose until it stopped right at the threshold of the lobby. The air turned cold enough for my breath to fog, and then the towels on top shifted, sliding to the floor one by one, until what remained wasn't fabric at all, but another brass key, oval-shaped, engraved with the number 9, wet as if pulled straight from the drowned stairs on the TV. I wanted to run, to bolt out the glass doors into the storm, but before I could move, the lobby lights flickered out, plunging everything into blue glow from the Channel 0 screen, and in that glow, I saw the cart begin to move again, not away, but forward, wheels squealing across the tile until it pressed against the counter. And I swear I felt something lean over it, a shape I couldn't see, but that I felt in my bones, heavy and watching. The phone receiver clicked softly back into place on its own, and a whisper rose from the darkness, not from the TV, or the phone, or even the corridor, but from the very walls. Rules keep you safe, Fred, but rules also keep her in. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe the memory of Lydia's desperate face, maybe the way my uncle's voice had echoed through the line, but I snatched the wet key off the cart and bolted for room 9, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the storm, the neon sign, everything. And as I jammed the key into the door, the lock turned with a groan like something waking up, and the doors swung wide open to reveal the staircase exactly as it had appeared on the TV, slick concrete descending into black water, and the smell that rose from it wasn't mildew or rot, it was salt, ocean salt, heavy and endless like I was standing on the edge of a drowning world. I stood there, clutching the key, shaking, knowing I'd broken the one rule my uncle had always emphasized, the only rule he said belonged to me alone, and I couldn't tell if the motel was punishing me or rewarding me for it. But either way, the rules had shifted. The bargain had changed. And I knew then there was no going back. Not for me, not for Lydia, not for anyone who had ever asked for the strong kind.
I don't know what I expected when I stood at the top of those stairs behind room 9, clutching the wet brass key like it might either save me or drag me down. But the moment I stepped past the threshold, I felt the motel shift behind me, the air thickening as if the walls themselves leaned forward to watch. The concrete steps were slick with moisture, each one echoing under my boots like I was walking inside a hollow drum. And the deeper I went, the more the sounds of the world above, the storm, the hum of neon, even the throb of the lobby phone, dissolved until all I could hear was the drip of water and my own ragged breath. The smell grew stronger too. Not mildew, not sewage, but salt, the tang of the ocean I hadn't seen since I was a kid.
And it made no sense because the nearest coast was hours away, yet the air felt heavy, briny, like the tide had rolled straight into the motel's foundation. Halfway down, I passed the first thing that told me I wasn't the first fool to come here, a shoe, bloated and water-stained, sitting neatly on a step like someone had slipped out of it mid-descent. Further down lay a stack of coins, foreign, tarnished, each one gleaming faintly in the dark, arranged in a perfect circle as if someone had placed them as an offering. I tried not to touch anything, remembering Rule 3, remembering the carts and their unasked-for gifts, but the deeper I went, the more the rules felt like whispers in a language I was just beginning to understand. Warnings, yes, but also instructions. Breadcrumbs meant to guide as much as to limit. When I finally reached the landing, the air hit me like a wall, cold and damp, and in front of me stood a door painted the same peeling beige as our rooms upstairs. But the number on it wasn't one we owned. 11. Burned into the wood as if scorched by heat. I hesitated, the key in my hand slick and pulsing faintly with its own cold, and I thought of my uncle's words. We don't have a room 11 on paper, but there's a door that likes to think it is. And I knew this was it, the motel's hidden heart. When I slid the key into the lock, the tumblers clicked, with a sound like a bone snapping, and the door swung inward without me pushing. The room beyond was wrong in ways that scraped at my mind. The bed was made but sagging in the middle as though something invisible pressed down on it. The mirror reflected not me but the stairwell behind me, empty. And the television sat on the dresser glowing faint blue even though no cord ran into the wall. Channel 0 flickered across its surface showing the pool again, only now the angle was from beneath the water, looking up, as if something was staring out from the depths. I should have run, should have thrown the key back into that drowned stairwell and sealed the door. But instead, I stepped inside, and the moment my foot crossed the threshold, I heard it. A voice, faint, trembling, carried through the static of the TV. Fred. But it wasn't my uncle this time, and it wasn't Lydia. It was softer, younger, the voice of someone I'd never met but recognized instantly from Lydia's desperate whispers. Her sister calling out from wherever the motel had swallowed her. I froze, throat tight, heart hammering, and then the mirror flickered again, rippling like water. And for a second I saw her face there, wet hair plastered to pale cheeks, eyes wide and pleading, mouth moving but the words drowned out by static. And I stumbled back against the dresser, nearly knocking the TV to the floor. The air in the room thickened, pressing in on me, and the bed groaned as if something unseen had shifted on it, weight dragging the sheets taut. Then the whisper grew louder, overlapping itself. Voices layered, not just Lydia's sister anymore, but others, dozens, maybe hundreds, all begging, pleading, some calling names I didn't recognize, some crying, some laughing too hard. And I realized with a sick drop in my gut that this wasn't a room, not really. It was a holding place, a mouth where all the broken rules and lost souls were kept until the motel decided what to do with them. I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut on its own, the handle freezing under my palm when I tried to wrench it open. And the mirror rippled again, harder this time, water spilling across its surface and dripping onto the carpet, soaking it dark. In the glass, faces pressed against the surface from the other side, not just Lydia's sister but others, men, women, even a child, all silent now, eyes fixed on me as though I'd been chosen for something. And then the TV snapped to black, the static cutting off with a final hiss. And in the silence, I heard the unmistakable squeak of wheels rolling on tile, housekeeping carts, Rule 3. But this time the sound wasn't muffled by distance. It was in the hallway, just outside, circling, waiting. And I knew then the motel wasn't going to let me leave the way I came in. Whatever bargain I had broken by picking up the phone and carrying that key down here had marked me, tied me to this place in a way no binder of rules could undo. And as the walls pulsed faintly like lungs breathing, I realized the motel didn't just want obedience. It wanted participation. It wanted me to step further in, to carry the rules down with me and turn them into something more. And for the first time I wondered if Uncle Rob knew that all along. If that was why his hand had trembled when he gave me the binder. Not from age, but from knowing that once the motel decided you belonged, the only real rule left was this: you don't get to leave.
The air inside room 11 grew so heavy, I could feel it pressing down on my chest, each breath shallow, like I was inhaling through water. And as I stood there, frozen, the bed dipped further, invisible weight dragging the sheets until they tore slightly at the seams. And that was when I saw it. A handprint forming on the blanket, pressing down from nowhere, the outline of long, bony fingers indenting the fabric. And my stomach lurched because it looked identical to the pale hand I'd seen on Channel 0 reaching from beneath the pool. I staggered back, my shoulder hitting the dresser, and the TV sprang to life again. Not with static this time, but with motion. Shaky black and white footage like an old security feed, showing me from above, standing in the very room I was in, my face pale, eyes wide, and in the footage the door behind me creaked open slowly, though in a real room it was still shut tight. Panic surged, but before I could act, the mirror rippled again, and voice spilled out. Not one, but many, layered whispers all hissing the same thing. Down, Fred, down, urging me toward a pull I couldn't see. My instinct screamed to bolt, to pound on the locked door until it let me out, but my body betrayed me, legs carrying me toward the bed as if dragged by unseen strings. And the closer I got, the colder it became, frost prickling across my skin until I could see my own breath fog in the gloom. The handprint shifted, sliding across the bed toward the edge, as if whatever owned it was climbing out to meet me. And then I saw the shape rising, a figure, tall and impossibly thin. Head bowed, water dripping steadily from its hair, though the floor beneath stayed dry. It lifted its face slowly, and in that pale, dripping face, I recognized pieces of everyone I'd ever seen the motel swallow. Lydia's sister's eyes, the old trucker's jawline, even the faint smirk of Gary who had vanished into the storm. And my blood turned to ice, as it whispered, in dozens of overlapping voices, "You kept the key." The oval tag burned cold in my pocket where I'd shoved it without realizing, and I grabbed it reflexively, pulling it out, my fingers numb around the brass, and the figure's eyes tracked it hungrily, like a predator watching prey. "Throw it back," I croaked, but the thing shook its head slowly, water flinging from its hair in long arcs, and hissed, "It was never yours to give away." The walls groaned, the ceiling bulged, and suddenly the sound of wheels filled the hall outside again, louder than before. Carts rattling, bottles clinking, moving in circles around the room like vultures waiting for something to die. And the door handle jiggled violently as though someone or something was trying to get in. Panic took over. I hurled the key at the figure, but instead of hitting it, the brass tag passed straight through like it was smoke and clattered to the floor, spinning until it landed numbers up. 11. The figure stooped impossibly fast, snatched it up in its dripping hand, and for the first time it smiled, lips cracking wide in a grin too big for its face, revealing rows of teeth that weren't human, each one glistening with brine. Then it whispered, "Rule 7, and vanished, leaving only the bed sagging, the sheets soaked, and the echo of those words ringing in my ears. I stumbled to the door, tried the handle again, and this time it opened easily, swinging into the stairwell. But the stairs weren't the same. They didn't lead up to the motel anymore. They spiraled down into black water that churned like a tide, and the salt smell punched me in the lungs so hard I gagged. Behind me, the TV flickered one last time, showing Uncle Rob sitting at the lobby counter, binder open, his head bowed in exhaustion. And I realized with a jolt of dread that he wasn't asleep. He was praying, lips moving, repeating words I couldn't hear. And it dawned on me that maybe he'd always known about more than 6 rules. Maybe he'd been clinging to his own fragile bargains all this time. The carts rattled louder, closer, and the door began to swing shut behind me on its own. So I bolted forward, down the first step, the second, my shoes splashing into shallow water that deepened with every stride. And as the stairwell sealed above me, the darkness swallowed the last trace of motel light. My breaths came quick, ragged, echoing in the hollow shaft, and all around me voices rose, not whispers this time, but chants, calling my name, calling for the strong kind, demanding I serve them as currency, as ferryman, as keeper of rules they claimed had never been written but always existed. And in that drowned, spiraling dark, clutching the image of Uncle Rob praying upstairs, I understood the truth the motel had been inching me toward since the night I first flipped its open sign. Rules don't just protect you, they bind you. They define your place, and once the place has a claim on you, it starts writing new ones.
The deeper I descended, the more the stairwell seemed to fold in on itself, the walls narrowing, the steps slicker, until it felt less like a staircase and more like the throat of some great beast pulling me down. And the voices that had once whispered my name now chanted in unison, hundreds layered together, each one demanding the same thing, Rule 7. Though I didn't know what that meant beyond the figure's parting smile. And every time they spoke it, the words struck me like blows, hollowing me out, leaving me weaker. The water lapping at my ankles grew colder, saltier, until I was sure it would freeze the skin from my bones, and when I reached the next landing, I nearly collapsed against the wall, my chest heaving. There was a door here too, but this one wasn't numbered, just blank wood swollen with damp, and scratched into it with something sharp or 6 crooked lines. The first 6 rules I knew etched there in jagged strokes, but beneath them was a 7th line half-finished, trailing into nothing like someone had been carving it when they were dragged away. I reached out without thinking, and the moment my fingers brushed the damp groove, the chanting stopped, silence slamming into me so hard I thought my heart had quit. And then, from the other side of the door, came a slow knock, 3 beats, steady, like someone who had been waiting patiently all along. Every instinct screamed not to open it, but the silence pressed heavier than the voices, unbearable. So I pushed and the door swung inward into a vast chamber that couldn't possibly fit beneath a roadside motel, an expanse of water stretching into blackness, a drowned cathedral where pillars rose like ribs from the depths. And on each pillar hung keys, hundreds of them, brass and silver and iron, some modern, some ancient, all swaying gently as though moved by a current I couldn't feel. This sight made my knees weak because I realized then that every key we'd ever found, everyone tossed into the pool, everyone discarded, had ended up here, hanging like trophies. And at the center of the chamber, on a dais just above the waterline, sat a book bound in wet leather, its pages rippling as though breathing. I knew before I touched it that it was the source of the rules, not my uncle's binder, but the original ledger the motel had been writing for longer than anyone had been alive. And when I stepped forward, the water at my feet deepening to my calves, I could see the 7th line already etched into its open page. Rule 7. Once you carry the key below, you must keep the door. My stomach dropped, bile rising in my throat because I understood what the figure meant when it smiled. Rule 7 wasn't just another warning, it was a chain, binding me to the motel's depths as its keeper, the one who watches the stairwell, who answers the phone when it calls, who delivers the strong kind to those who ask. And the sickest part of all was that the book didn't ask for agreement, it assumed it. My name was already written beneath the rule in ink that looked like it had been drawn from my veins, red and pulsing faintly. And as I stared, the water all around rippled violently, keys clinking against stone, voices rising again, but this time not demanding. They were cheering, welcoming, claiming. I staggered back, but the dais loomed larger, closer, the chamber shifting around me like it wanted to keep me inside, and above the faintest light broke through. Channel 0 flickering, the pool outside, the real pool shimmering faintly on the TV screens upstairs, and in that ghost of light I saw a shadow leaning over, Lydia maybe, or someone else staring down at me, with eyes wide and wet with grief. "Help," I croaked, though the water swallowed the sound and the book snapped shut, keys clattering louder, voices deafening, until they resolved into one clear phrase. "Keep the door, Fred. Keep it closed until the coffee runs cold." My blood iced as I realized the rules weren't just instructions for guests, they were commandments for the keeper, obligations written in blood and brine, and now that I'd brought the key here, now that I'd stepped into the chamber, the motel had decided I was next in line. The knock came again, from somewhere deeper below. 3 beats, steady, patient, and I knew that whatever waited there wanted out, and that my job now was to make sure it stayed in. The horror of it wasn't just the ghosts, the voices, the drowned faces pressing against mirrors. It was the responsibility, the endless, suffocating knowledge that my life wasn't mine own anymore. It was the motel's. And that if I ever failed, if I ever broke Rule 7, whatever clawed at those stairs would rise, and the world above wouldn't survive it.
I stood ankle deep in that black water, the book shut tight on its dais, my name still glowing faintly on its cover like an accusation. And I told myself I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't be the motel's keeper. I wouldn't let this place decide who I was. But the moment the thought formed, the chamber seemed to hear it, because the water surged cold around my legs, dragging me a step closer to the dais, like it meant to remind me who held the leash. I dug my heels into the stone step, clutching the wall, but all around me the pillars shuddered, keys jangling like a chorus of bells.
the sound drilling into my skull until it felt like each one was carving new rules into me, ones I hadn't read yet, ones I didn't want to know. I tried to scream, but the air here didn't carry sound right, swallowing it down like the water did. And in that silence, a new noise rose, the squeak of wheels, echoing through the chamber, faint at first, then louder, until it was all I could hear, circling me the way it had in the motel hallway. And when I turned, I saw them, housekeeping carts, dozens of them, rolling slowly out of the water, each one stacked with linens that dripped brine, bottles clinking against one another, moving as if pushed by invisible hands. They circled me in the shallows, hurting me, and I realized with a cold sinking that this was punishment. This was the motel telling me what happened to those who hesitated. The nearest cart stopped in front of me, and a towel slid off the top on its own, falling at my feet, and stitched into the fabric in the old blue thread of our discarded logo were words I shouldn't have been able to read. Keep the door or lose the world? I staggered back, shaking my head, muttering, "No, no, this isn't mine." But the carts pressed closer, wheels grinding stone, until one of them tipped its load and a cascade of towels spilled into the water, rising, swelling, folding themselves into the shape of hands that reached for my legs. I kicked, fought, but the cloth clung cold and heavy, dragging me down, pulling me toward the dais whether I wanted it or not. And in my panic, I cried out for Uncle Rob, for Lydia, for anyone. But only the chamber answered, its voice layered with all the others it had consumed. "There is no leaving, Fred, only trading, only keeping." And the book snapped open again on its own, its pages flipping violently, ink streaming like veins, until it landed on a blank line beneath Rule 7, waiting for me to write what came next. I thrashed against the hands of cloth, managed to rip free, stumbled toward the stairs, and for a heartbeat, I thought I'd made it, thought maybe the motel hadn't locked me down completely yet. But when I looked up, the stairwell was gone, replaced by another door, paint peeling, wood swollen, a brass plate bolted to the center that read reception. And when I opened it, I found myself back in the lobby, soaked, panting, but everything wrong. The neon outside wasn't buzzing anymore, but glowing steadily red bright like a fresh wound. The binder on the counter wasn't my uncle's meat copy, but the wet leather book from below. And the key rack behind the counter was full of tags, all oval, all engraved with numbers that didn't belong to us. Maggie, the part-time waitress, stood behind the counter where I usually did, her eyes wide and glassy, a smile stretched too far across her face, and she said in a voice that wasn't hers, "You hesitated, Fred, and hesitation writes its own rules," before sliding me a key across the counter, brass tags slick with water, number etched sharp. I didn't want to touch it, but my hand closed around it anyway, the cold burrowing into my skin like a nail. And when I looked back at Maggie, she was gone. Just the empty counter and the leather book waiting, its page still open, my name still scrawled beneath the rules, a blank line waiting for Rule 8. I realized then the motel wasn't punishing me for refusing, it was punishing me for pausing, for daring to think I had a choice. And now it wanted me to keep going, to write more rules, to expand the binder for the next poor soul it dragged under. And as I stood there, dripping, trembling, clutching the key I couldn't drop, I finally understood the weight my uncle carried all those years, why his hands shook when he handed me the binder, why his eyes looked older than his face. He hadn't just known about the rules, he'd been forced to add to them, same as me. And one day his hesitation must have passed the torch to me, the motel choosing, the motel binding. And if I didn't comply, if I didn't carve Rule 8 into the page, it wouldn't just take me, it would take everything, because the words on that towel burned in my head louder than my own thoughts. Keep the door or lose the world.
The lobby felt unfamiliar, like I had stepped into a version of the motel where the angles didn't match and the light came from nowhere. Everything too sharp, too vivid. the air humming with a pressure that made my ears ring, and the leather book on the counter throbbed faintly like a heart, each pulse syncing with my own until I couldn't tell where my body ended and the motel began. I wanted to fling the key, numbered 7, into the pool, to break Rule 6 just to spite the place. But when I moved toward the door, my legs locked, stiff as boards, and the glass reflected not me, but a stranger. Gaunt, eyes dark, clothes soaked, a brass tag hanging from his neck like a dog's collar, and behind that reflection, the vacancy sign burned not red but white, letters flickering until they rearranged into a word that made my blood turn to ice. Keeper. The phone on the counter began to ring, and this time it didn't wait for midnight. It rang and rang, the red light pulsing brighter with every chime. And I knew if I picked it up, it would be the world itself calling, begging for release. But if I didn't answer, the motel would tighten its grip and I'd never leave. My uncle's voice came back to me then, words from that first night. They're not for you, Fred. They're for the motel. But now I understood the part he hadn't said. When the motel decides it wants you, the rules become yours whether you ask for them or not. And breaking them doesn't end the nightmare, it spreads it. The ringing drilled deeper until my skull buzzed, and the TV in the corner snapped onto channel 0, showing not the pool or the stairs this time, but the world outside. The highway stretching empty, the pine forest bending under wind. And then slowly, the camera panned down to show cracks opening in the asphalt, black water bubbling up like the sea had been waiting beneath the ground all along. I slammed my hands over my ears, but I didn't stop. The motel speaking straight into my bones. If you don't keep the door, Fred, the door opens everywhere. And the image on the screen confirmed it. Cars abandoned on the highway filling with brine, truck stops half submerged, the world above drowning as the world below broke loose. I staggered back, tripped over the towel I'd left untouched earlier, and when I hit the floor, I realized it wasn't a towel anymore, but a wet shroud, stitched with those same awful words, "Keep the door or lose the world." And they glowed as if lit from inside. I crawled toward the counter, desperate, screaming at the book, "What do you want from me?" And the page turned on its own, blank lines unfurling like veins, waiting, expecting, demanding I add Rule 8, Rule 9, Rule 10, as many as it took until the motel's hunger was satisfied. I wanted to refuse, wanted to burn the thing, but the key in my hand seared cold into my skin until my vision blurred, and without realizing I'd picked up a pen, black ink dripping like blood, my hand moving against my will, scratching words onto the page. Rule 8, never let the door stand open past dawn. Rule 9, the keeper must not leave the grounds while the pool reflects the stairs. Rule 10, if the phone knows your voice, answer, but never speak first. The book shuddered like it was pleased, the ink sinking into the page, and the weight pressing on my chest eased just slightly, enough for me to breathe. But the horror of it hit harder than any ghost or shadow. I had done exactly what it wanted, carried on the work, fed the rules, sealed myself as the next link in the chain, and the motel had won. I fell to my knees, sobbing, the phone finally falling silent, the TV clicking off, the world outside settling like the cracks had never been there. And for a moment, just a moment, I almost believed I could live with it, that maybe being the keeper wasn't the worst fate, until I heard the door chime ring, and I looked up to see a man dripping wet from the rain, eyes sunken, sliding a damp bill across the counter, his voice hollow as he said, "Room 6. And when I handed him the key without thinking, the brass tag warm in my palm, I realized the cycle had already started, the motel using me the way it had used my uncle, and when his hand brushed mine, I felt the faintest pulse of gratitude, not from him, but from the motel itself. I swallowed hard, straightened the binder on the desk, wiped my face, and whispered the words I thought might keep me sane. My name is Fred, and I work at my uncle's motel, and there are rules to follow, 6 of them, 7 of them, 10 of them, maybe more, and as long as I keep them, the world stays safe. But if I falter, if I hesitate again, it won't just be me the motel swallows, it'll be everything above it, every highway, every town, every life. And as the neon hummed and the rain pattered steady, I knew the story was no longer about whether I could escape, it was about whether I could endure. Because keepers don't get endings, they get rules.
And that's the story of Fred, the motel, and the rules that don't stop at 6. Some doors are meant to stay closed, and some jobs don't let you quit. They keep you until the world ends. If you enjoyed tonight's story, check out the other terrifying tales waiting for you right here on Echoes After Midnight.
Don't forget to subscribe, because next time, the rules might come for you.